Welcome back to another episode of R&B Fantasy. It is myself and just Boyd today. We have no Bick this week. He is currently in Vegas having a grand old time at the FFPC main event. So
Yeah,
he's
had to
having
had
he's
to
having a
draft a
good time.
banger team. Had to draft a
Yeah.
banger.
So hopefully he'll be back and join us next week. So we'll just be holding down the fort for now. But in this week's episode, we're going to be going over a week one recap of all the games Thursday through Monday. Just kind of, some brief touch points of those games, just things that we noticed, things to monitor. And then at the end of the show, we're going to kind of go over waiver scoops that, based off of the points that we brought up during the show. Hopefully you guys see this before your waivers run on Wednesday. At the same time, just keep in mind this is week one. Please don't overreact just yet. Take in some of the information, but don't overreact based on some players that did way better than we expected and also way worse than we expected. There could be reasons for why that is that we'll discuss in the show. At the same time, it's also the weekly variance that comes with fantasy football. It's just it didn't happen to go your way in the first week. So without further ado, Boyd, do you have any introductory remarks before we get into it?
When I lose, it's variance, and when I win, it's all skill. So
Yeah, that is correct.
week one was a lot of variance.
Yes, it was. Especially if you played against the Bears defense, which I did, which was not fun.
Ugh.
So the first game we got up here is the Thursday night football game, which kicked off our NFL season with the
Great game
Ravens
to start
losing
with,
to
by
the
the way.
Chiefs. Very great game. Honestly, the first two games were very good. I enjoyed both.
Yeah.
We saw the Ravens lose 20-27 against the Kansas City Chiefs, the reigning Super Bowl champions. And we're going to start off by discussing the teams that we see on the left to the right, just so that you guys are aware. So we're going to start with the Ravens and then go to the Chiefs. It's just the way, then the home team. That's just how we're going to do it, just so that you follow along. And same thing with the notes. That's also top to bottom. So, Boyd, what did you kind of notice about Lamar Jackson in this game?
He's mobile as hell. It's just Lamar. Every single time the pocket got collapsed on him, he just made a play. It's very fun to watch. I love watching Lamar play
Mm-hmm.
football. It's just Lamar
Yeah.
Jackson, dude, 2-time MVP. He looked really light, like a lot lighter out there with the weight loss. Actually, it looked like he was. I don't know. It's just Lamar. It's fun watching him play. The way he avoids hits is always
Mm-hmm.
so much fun. It was a good time.
Yeah, I think it showed the also like the strength
Passes
of the
though.
Kansas City D line. Yeah,
Yeah,
his passing was a little bit, which I'll get to in a second,
yeah,
but
yeah.
the
We'll
O
talk about
line was
that.
not great. The defensive line was also very good, so it didn't really give Lamar the best recipe for success. There was some missed throws, but at the same token,
Yeah,
Lamar is the only reason why they were still in this game. So it's just it's the first weekend, or yeah, it's the first weekend of the season. Like guys are going to be rusty. There's going to be some bad performances, and
everyone
guys
was
will come
rusty.
into their form. Like that whole ending sequence, like yes, Lamar did make a bad throw. When he had a guy wide open, I think it was likely when he got injured in that corner or that corner
I
route.
thought Likely broke his arm. I thought he was done.
Yeah, I thought he had a rib injury, but regardless, that was a bad throw. The Zay Flowers one was actually more on Zay Flowers because he did like the camera angle for the TV looked like it was Lamar's fault, but then when you actually saw the route, he kept running when he should have sat in the soft spot. Also, Lamar was trying to throw over a guy and he was being pressured by two guys as well. So that was more so on the pocket collapsing and Zay Flowers miscommunicating. And then the obviously unfortunate Isaiah Likely reverse touchdown, which led us to not going to overtime in this game. But I do think that Lamar showed a lot of promise this year, and we could see another borderline MVP caliber season from him. And I'm very excited for the leagues that I do have him in.
Yeah, it's fun watching Lamar. His
Mhm.
third down, third and short, even third and medium, like whenever he needed to make a play with his feet and the pocket wasn't there
Mhm.
for him, it was awesome. But yeah, those
Right.
throws, it was a little tough watching some of those throws.
Yeah, for sure. But it did equate to 12 targets for Isaiah Likely, which has been the biggest talking point in fantasy this week. I don't think that Isaiah Likely sees a much better week than we have seen this week, but you never know. However, it is very encouraging to see that he is getting work alongside Mark Andrews, the new Ravens left tackle. But I think that I think Isaiah Likely, yes, Bateman did have, 5 targets, but I think Isaiah Likely is probably their wide receiver too, more or less.
Oh yeah,
And
100%.
And I think that he is definitely one of the priority ads, which we'll talk about later for this week.
Yeah, if he's somehow on waivers.
Right, exactly. And then Zay Flowers had 10 targets. Granted, they were all very short screen passes, but that's just what Zay Flowers has
Yeah,
done.
that's
He's
Zay
always been
Flowers
that
for you.
low ADOT guy. And I think that that's still valuable in a PPR format. I don't think that he's going to be, have a nuclear upside, but I think he'll be a solid wide receiver too the rest of the go if he gets that type of, volume and target share throughout the season. And in terms of the running backs, Boyd, do you want to kind of hit on both Derrick Henry and Justice Hill here?
I'm tired of watching Derrick Henry. It was just another Derrick. It was just the old man Henry.
Yeah.
1st and 10. Let's give the ball to him, and then let's take him out and put Justice Hill on the field. Got his name wrong. That's disrespectful. The man had had like 11 PPR points. I gotta respect his name. Justice
Mm-hmm.
Hill. He had like, I mean, every single. It felt like he was just a safety valve this game. Derrick Henry. I mean, he scored the touchdown. He did Derrick Henry things. He's gonna do that a lot this year.
Mm-hmm.
So Derrick Henry's completely fine for fantasy. It was kind of rough watching their offense just lose a yard or gain like 2 on 1st down, and then just switch him out for Justice Hill, so Justice Hill could play
Right.
the receiving back role. It's just not what Derrick Henry does. So
Mm-hmm.
Derrick Henry's gonna score points. That's just what he does, and he proved it here. I mean, he was a fine fantasy asset. Justice Hill was also surprisingly a quality fantasy asset. PPR league is definitely worth a looker, but standard, no way.
Yeah, no. The thing with Derrick Henry, he's going to be very game script dependent this year.
Yeah,
Like I know every year it's basically like he scores worse in losses than wins because he's not that much of a pass catching back. But I think it's going to be heightened even more now that he's a little bit older and a different offense where they do have a receiving back in Justice Hill who
yeah, they're
acted as a
perfectly
safety
comfortable
valve.
using him. Like it seems like
Right.
so. Especially with the game script, like you said, like the game script they were trailing. It's really hard to
Hmm.
kind of force Derrick Henry into those situations, especially as the game goes
Right.
closer to the end.
For sure. So that's enough on Baltimore side. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And we'll move over to Kansas City
Wait,
now.
wait, wait, wait,
This was
wait,
not.
wait, 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 wait.
Oh,
I feel like we gotta talk about Mark Andrews for like a second. Are you worried at all
okay.
about Mark Andrews? You said he was a
No,
left
that's
tackle now.
why that's why I put I was there. That was just a meme, but I'm not worried about him just yet. Like that's one of those week one reactions where like honestly, the best tight end like out of all the top tight ends that were drafted this year was Kyle Pitts, who had just over 10 points, whereas every other tight end
It was Kyle Pitts
had less than
week.
that. So it was a Kyle Pitts week, but like tight end this week was just a crapshoot. So I'm just going to chalk it up to just variance and then just kind of move on. We'll re-examine it if it happens for consecutive weeks, and then we should be alarmed. But that's kind of
Yeah,
why I didn't want to really talk about it because it was just kind of,
I feel like a lot
I
of
don't
people are
really care
worrying,
yet.
so it's worth talking about. I am not
Yeah.
worried yet.
Hmm.
If I was worried about every single player who had a bad week one, I would not roster any good players right now. So
Exactly.
I mean, just wasn't a good week one for a lot of people. So
Hmm.
I'm not stressing about it. If it continues to be a problem and we really
Hmm.
just see the impact of the injury from last year, the car accident in the summer, if it really seems to impact him and nags on him for the rest of the foreseeable future, then I will panic. But right now, not going to panic. Good buy low if you're playing in a dynasty league, especially tight end premium. People are losing their absolute, like they're just losing their minds over this
Hmm.
stuff. I think the instant FUD reaction is getting. It's obviously the window's closing compared to like Friday. Friday was a bad day to be a Mark Andrews guy, but I
Yeah.
think people are kind of starting to come back to reality about the fact that he's Mark Andrews and they pay him a lot of money and he's good at
Right.
football. So I agree.
I definitely agree. Alrighty, so moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs. Pat Mahomes had a decent day in terms of the passing yards, but overall, it was pretty mediocre for fantasy purposes. Um, well, the biggest thing we can talk about here is the Kansas City pass catchers. I didn't really want to talk that much about Isaiah Pacheco because he kind of just did what we expected. That low end RB1 that's going to get some receiving work and hopefully get a touchdown or two. But Xavier Worthy was the buzz. I mean, his first two touches were touchdowns. Like, granted, one of them came off of a broken coverage, but still, like his first two NFL touches were touchdowns here. And yes, this is unsustainable production. We know this. However, it is
No.
encouraging. It is encouraging to see that he is getting this type of usage where he got a design play to, show that his speed capabilities and he housed it for 21 yards, and it was targeted like deep down the field twice. So I think that if you have him and you can get a top 24 receiver for him somehow, I would definitely try to trade Xavier Worthy. However, if you can't get that type of quality, you just hold him. You don't necessarily start him every week, but you hold him hoping that he, could get a little bit more volume, and then hopefully that big playability that he has is even better now. Like, for all we know, he could end with freaking 16 total touchdowns on the season, and then I could look stupid here, but I don't think
That'd be
that
awesome.
he's going to be. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be that. Like, if he does that, it's going to be on like 15% target share, which I mean is going to be fantastic if that's achievable. But we don't want to look too far into this. We were encouraged by it, but we don't want to make one sweeping generalization one way or another. Don't trade him at all costs, but also try to trade him if you can get a really good player out of it. Like, I would potentially trade him for Chris Olave if I could somehow get that done. Like, because
Oh
I've
yeah,
seen so many people
yeah,
panic
easy,
on Chris Olave,
easy.
but that's like just a trade that is likely not achievable, but hey, couldn't hurt to figure it out. But on other notes, I know this is pretty encouraging for myself, but do you want to talk about Rashee Rice here, Boyd?
Rashi Rice was a dog. In his first
Yes,
read on a
sir.
lot of plays. You were just talking about Xavier Worthy. I don't really think he's like someone you should be trying to trade, but like you said, if somebody comes a knocking with the right price, totally get rid of him. I traded Xavier Worthy for Rashi Rice. I want to say Saturday morning. Got the offer late
In
Friday night.
Dynasty or redraft?
Yeah, Dynasty.
Oh,
Traded.
okay.
Shout out to KP for that one. Yeah, did that. Got that Friday night and did it Saturday morning. I didn't even realize I got it Friday night and just woke up and saw it and said, "All right, well, I'll take the guy
Mm-hmm.
that, yeah, I'll take the guy that was the first read on a lot of plays and just felt like
Yep,
he was just getting spammed the ball. Not obviously not too much downfield, but I play in PPR leagues and those 7 catches definitely help.
for sure. I mean, the yardage, the volume, it's all there. It's the only thing that's missing was just the
Yeah,
touchdown, which
yeah. I
is the
mean,
hardest thing to predict. So,
17 PPR points with no touchdown is awesome. Shout out to Nico Collins
mhm,
as well, similar type thing. We'll talk about him later, but I
right.
like Rasheed Rice. I really wish I would have drafted more of him earlier in the summer when he was going like round 8 or round 9 on underdog. I drafted some, but I was not trying to be super overweight on him, so I didn't draft a lot. I think I have like 12 or 13% of him, which is,
Mhm,
that's solid, but I wish I would have had more because he just seems like he's the number one option in the Mahomes offense,
right.
and he's just free PPR points, which is delightful.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely think he's one of the very few wide receivers that you can start week in and week out going forward, where you feel pretty confident you'll get at least 10 points,
Yeah,
like no
yeah,
doubt about it.
I'd say he has a pretty good floor. They seem to really like him there. I mean, he was just
Mhm,
getting, like I said, he was getting spammed the ball on the as a first read a lot
mhm.
of times.
Right,
Slant
I agree.
boy
Mhm.
2.0.
Now, the next person is another tight end that did poorly this week. Shocker.
We're gonna
But
talk about
Travis
that a lot.
Kelsey, yep, targeted 4 times, 3 for 34. Not an inspiring stat line, but not really one that causes me worry. Like, he was game planned against. You could tell like they were covering him quite well in this game. And also, Rasheed Rice was the main read on a lot of these plays. He was just getting open very quickly. They were running a lot of those the zig slants across the middle that he was just always breaking off of his defenders. So we could just chalk this up to weekly variance. I'm not concerned about it. Travis Kelsey still looks like he hasn't really lost much. So we'll see if age has finally caught up to him or if he's still, Travis Kelsey. So,
We'll
boy, do
find
you have
out.
any further remarks on this
I am
game?
good. Thursday night football was good
Alrighty.
for once.
Yes, it was. Now we had Friday night football in Sao Paulo, Brazil. This game was pretty interesting. Unfortunately, it was not a great end for Jordan Love, but we see the Eagles take down the Packers 34-29. It was a very close game. And there's a lot to take away from this, so we'll get right into it. So Jordan Love at the end of the game ended up getting hurt, and they're not putting him on IR, but based on his initial timeline, based on like various doctors that I've seen just diagnose and speculate, it's between 3 to 6 weeks in terms of his recovery time. So we could see him as early as week 3, even, but I would not be counting on Jordan Love being in your lineup until at least week 4, week 5. It's unfortunate. You stash him if you can, but also if you don't have many great waiver options, you can stream, but I wouldn't drop Jordan Love. And the Packers are not planning on going after a quarterback such as Ryan Tannehill in free agency. So it looks like Malik Willis will be the starter going forward. I think that if you're in Dynasty and you see him on the wire, I wouldn't spend too much budget. I'd spend some just because he is a starting quarterback, but I don't think he's going to be anything that great.
Yeah, he sucks.
And we'll get, yeah, he's not great at all, but we'll get to how that affects the rest of the team shortly. But what did you think of Josh Jacobs in this game? I was pretty encouraged. The beginning was a little rough, but I felt like as the game went on, he looked a little better.
Yeah, the beginning was not good, to put it lightly. But yeah, like you said, I mean, it looks like he just needed to get in the rhythm, get more touches. And as the game went on, he seems like one of those running backs who, when he gets fed the ball more, he starts to look more comfortable out there and hits better runs. And that was kind of the situation here. I mean, it's kind of like
Hmm.
the same thing with Derrick Henry. He should be fine. Now that Love's hurt, you could argue that that Jacobs will get the ball more. But I think that it's kind of, which could be a good thing. But I think that the offense is going to be worse overall, which makes it more of a bad thing for Jacobs and obviously the whole offense as a whole. So I think he'll be
Hmm.
fine. I want Love to come back, obviously, and yeah, Jacobs is somebody he's just a solid running back. Nothing too exciting. I don't think
Hmm.
like 2 years ago is in his range of outcomes at all anymore. But today, first game with a new team, not today, but this week, first game with a new team, looked like Josh Jacobs.
Hmm.
Got better
Yeah,
as it
I
went
hope
on, like you
that.
said.
Yeah, for sure. I hope that now that Malik Willis is at the helm, that it's going to affect his efficiency just because they're going to likely game plan for them to run the ball a little bit more. I just hope that that will then translate to him getting slightly more, dump offs in the passing game to kind of make up for it in
Yeah,
PPR. Because he did get
pretty
some
dope.
usage. He did get 3 targets, 2 receptions for 20 yards receiving. So there is a little bit of that mixed in. It's not like he's just purely the grinder.
Yeah, give my dude a receiving touchdown though. Bro still doesn't have
Yep,
one.
I know. It's just a
Emmanuel
long,
Wilson as
long
well
journey.
was great on the ground. Looked
Mhm.
fantastic. I know he only had a few rushes, but he looked fantastic every time he touched the ball.
I think that also inspires me that Marshawn Lloyd might be beneficial in this offense when he comes
Yeah.
back. I
Yeah.
think that Emmanuel Wilson will end up slotting in as the running back 3, but who knows after the reps that he saw in this game. But we'll see. I think that Marshawn Lloyd is and Emmanuel Wilson are great, like deeper, like maybe 16 or 14 team stashes if you're in like a zero RB build. But they definitely will get some work down later down the line if Josh Jacobs were ever to miss time. I think that the one player that is the most insulated from the Jordan Love injury is Jaden Reed, and I kind of will explain my thoughts here. Is that Jaden Reed is a lot. He gets a lot of design plays. Like he had a lot of screen passes last year, which is actually a point I had brought up in one of our earlier episodes. And he also had that manufactured end around where he got a 33-yard rushing touchdown out of it. I think that if they start throwing screen passes to him or doing those end arounds, that he could likely still not see the week that he did this week. That's of course going to be likely his best start of the year, or one of them at least. I think that he'll still be, around that 15, like between 12 to 15 points per game. So I think he's flex worthy still. I don't think that if you have him, you're not going to start him unless like you have way better
Oh, for
options ahead of
sure.
him.
Yeah. Yeah. He's someone you gotta start
Because
still.
yeah, because I had like a friend of mine ask me what he thought about it, and I just said I would still start him just because he will likely he could have a dud just because of Malik Willis being absolutely garbage, but you never know. I'd say that he's the most insulated. I wouldn't touch any of the other wide receiver rooms. And speaking of other wide receivers, what did you kind of get out of the target share that we saw here in this game?
I like perfectly balanced as all things should be. They really spread the ball around. I think the most surprising thing to a lot of people, I know we're not at that part yet, but you're talking about target share, was Tucker Kraft over Luke Musgrave, or just one target more. But I think that actually
Hmm.
was something that a lot of people were surprised about. I think that Dontavian Wicks, 0 yards, not great, but he ran a lot of routes, so not really too worried about him. He was on the field a lot, just didn't really get the love this week. That's life. Best
Hmm.
ball is still worth a shot. I never really wanted much of him in redraft anyway, but so I guess if you have him, you could drop him for a running back that you like more. That's up to you. But yeah, they spread the ball out. It looks very similar. Obviously, there's the scheme plays for Jaden Reed, but overall they spread the ball out just like they did last year, where they're trying to get a lot of people involved and they're not trying to be formulaic and predictable with who they're getting the ball to.
Hmm. I think that Jaden Reed's the only one that's going to be the clear, option that they're going to use
Oh
at
yeah,
least
yeah. They
some
have
portion of the game.
plans for Jaden Reed, and they have him schemed up a certain way, and they're running
Yeah.
plays for him.
I think Dobbs and Watson are going to likely take a step back in terms of Watson was saved by a touchdown in this game, but I think that those two are going to likely be duds for the majority of the time. Like, granted, they get a touchdown
Do you
with
mean like
Willis at the helm.
like while Malik Willis is playing? I think that I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't want any of them. No, I'm
Mhm.
good. I'm good.
Yeah. I think that once Love comes back, we'll get further clarification as to, how they're going to spread it out, but it'll be mid-season by that point. So I think that Jaden Reed is the clear option in this offense. He was drafted as such, and I think that Watson and Dobbs are going to suffer as a result, or they could all suffer together, and we'll just watch Malik Willis crash and burn. So
Well, that's a
enough about the
certain.
cheeseheads here. Oh, sorry. What were we going to say? One
Him
last thing?
crashing and burning is a certain. That's like you can book that.
Yeah. I think it'll be reminiscent of what Tennessee did, which we'll get to a little later. So, just kind of moving over, there wasn't a whole lot I thought there would like to talk about the Eagles. I mean, they looked fairly good. Jalen Hurts had a lot of blunders in this game in terms of turnovers. He did fumble the ball twice, lost it once, and did throw 2 interceptions. So he's still got to work on that ball security. But it is the first game. He threw for almost 300 yards, did have 2 touchdowns. I think the biggest talking point here is Saquon Barkley. I mean, he looked amazing in this game.
Yeah.
They were using him. They used him as a receiver like twice, and he did end up scoring a touchdown, which was a fantastic route, by the way. It was a beautiful wheel route that he ended up breaking towards the corner. And then just his efficiency running the ball was great. And then once they just kept running it towards the end, he was getting stuffed. But I think that if you have Saquon Barkley, you're going to be very happy with his results, barring that he's healthy the rest of the year.
Yeah, Saquon cooked. I didn't. Yeah, props to Saquon.
Yeah.
Respect to
Yeah,
Saquon.
I know. I feel bad for Giants fans. They're punching the air, but it is what it is. But I do think that the one thing that we can discuss here is the 1A, 1B situation we have at the wide receiver position because AJ Brown is clearly the alpha in this wide receiver core as he has been since he's been in Philadelphia. But based on the usage that they both had, and just AJ Brown's majority of his yardage came off of one catch. I think that Devonta Smith is creeping up to quickly assume a 1B role, if not already in Philadelphia. And I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that because I have the issue of in a half PPR league starting Devonta Smith or Rashee Rice every week because I have Cup and Jamar Chase as my other two wide receivers. So I have to make the ridiculous decision to sit one of those two.
Playing deeper leagues is my answer to that. I'm only half trolling. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, AJ Brown is Batman. Devontae Smith is Robin. I think that's the best way to put it. Like
Mhm.
they're both good. They're both hashtag good at football. That's like that's known. And I mean, I think when they're both good, I just don't really care. I think you can definitely
Mhm.
start Devontae Smith absolutely every single week. He's wide receiver. I mean, he's a wide receiver 2 play. Wide receiver 3, worst case. Like if you have Devontae Smith wide receiver 3, you're balling. So I think
Mhm.
I'm not really a Rashad White guy. Everybody knows that. It's Bucky Irvin season. We all know. Everybody knows. So yeah, I mean, I think I would start Devontae probably, but I'm a demon. So that's
Mhm.
just me. Yeah, I do. I
Gotcha.
think those two are the certified absolute top dogs. I don't like Dallas Goedert. I know he had 4 catches. I just don't like him. I'm not. He's never been actually good for fantasy. He's always been
Mhm.
above mid with
He's the
potential
guy that you
to be
stream in a
better.
12-team league.
100%. But his name value is like, yeah, I got a starting tight end now. Yeah,
Mhm.
I just don't really feel that way about him. I think if his name, I think like for years it's been okay. He's getting like low end tight end 1, like high end tight end 2 numbers, and he's 25 years old. Maybe he has a breakout, but now
Mhm.
I don't see it happening at this point. I mean, he is who he is. So
Right.
I mean, tight end premium league, got to start him. Totally worth it. But normal like 10 team, I'm not really interested at all. 12 team,
Mhm.
there were injuries though, so you totally get having to start him. But like I'm just saying, especially from like a dynasty perspective, I am not really interested in what he has to offer. AJ Brown and
Mhm.
Devontae Smith are the top dogs, and especially with how they're using them, 8 targets, 10 targets, like those are the guys. Has been for
For
at
sure.
least for the past 2 years. I mean, hopefully they pay Smith, and it's like that for the foreseeable future as well.
Mhm. I think the one saving grace with Dallas Goedert here is that he's clearly the third option in the passing game. There's no like third wide receivers, so he will have a solid, like solid meaning extremely mid floor. So like if he's the best option that you have, then a tight end on the waiver wire, or like if you
For
had
sure, like
Njoku get
best of the
hurt and then
worst.
you start him. Yeah,
Or
he's like the guy
Ferguson.
that that you don't like. You don't really hate starting him, but like you're
Old
just
school
like,
Hunter
I
Henry
guess.
type beat.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, for sure.
all
I
right,
get
I'll
that
play him.
vibe.
That's kind of how I
Yeah.
feel. But his name's Dallas Goddard, so people are like, no, let's start him.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, that sums up for Friday's
Next.
game, and we'll move on to Sunday's
Yeah,
game.
no
So we'll
Saturday
try to
games. What
get
the
on
hell?
these. Yeah, no Saturday games. We didn't get a game for 5 straight days. Bummer.
I had to watch Michigan
But
get their ass kicked.
this was a brutal game to watch. I hated every time the red zone had to show this game. But
It's hurt.
the
Do we even
Steelers.
talk about this? It's horrible.
Well, we could talk about it very briefly, but yeah, the Steelers, aka Chris Boswell, beat the Atlanta Falcons 18-10 here.
1v11.
Not a single touchdown was scored on the Pittsburgh Steelers side, and I think that Chris Boswell had his best week in fantasy. I think if you want Chris Boswell, you have to cut a bad kicker, like or a mediocre kicker on your team, because he'll probably do well against mediocre and bad defenses because they're just that bad of an offense. But like against good defenses, this offense was so shockingly bad, and I don't think it'll improve much with Russell Wilson that he may just not be that like viable. Like you could just he'll just be another mid kicker, like just that streaming range. But regardless of Chris Boswell, that's not what we're really here to talk about. I'm going to just begin with Justin Fields, and then you can discuss the position players here. But Justin Fields had a decent game, fantasy wise. Nothing too crazy because there was no touchdowns involved. But he also never returned the ball over. He did fumble it, but he didn't lose that fumble. He didn't throw a pick. He was 17-23. Granted, his ADOT was very, very low. He was only sacked twice, and he did run the ball 14 times for 57 yards. So in the end, it was encouraging from a fantasy perspective, especially if Russell Wilson's out next week, because it's Mike Tomlin is trending towards the direction that Justin Fields will get another start again. I would definitely give it a go if you're in a 12-team league and you need to stream quarterbacks, and he's one of those options that you can. Granted, there's no like Stafford or Baker on the waiver wires, but I think that Justin Fields is still fantasy viable. He just needs to get those touchdowns, which he didn't in this game. But in terms of the position players, unless you had anything to add on Justin Fields or Russell Wilson here, I'll let you take the position players.
Justin Fields good for fantasy football. They're not going to not score touchdowns forever. So, yeah, I mean he's starting. They're playing Denver next week. Yeah, I mean Justin Fields. He's smash start. Smash start, in my opinion. I don't have anything. I don't have shit to say about any other player on the Steelers. They're playing Cordarrelle Patterson because Arthur Smith has fucking issues. That's kind of where I'm at with that. I mean, Jalen Warren had 2 touches.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah, I don't know. Pickens dominated. Pickens looked good.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of all I got.
Yeah, I think Najee is just going to get the straight volume. It's not going to be as split with Jalen Warren as we anticipated, but it also is week 1, so we could see some changes. But Najee is clearly the workhorse here, so you can still start him week in and week out as like a mid RB2. Hopefully he gets a touchdown, a couple receptions here and there, because Jalen Warren only got 2 targets in this game. Granted, they only attempted 23 passes. Yeah, that could definitely be it too. But Pickens was the only one that really stood out in the box score in this game, and he did have 1 good reception of those 6 for that 40 yards. But moving on to the rest of this shitty game, we have Kirk Cousins, who looked horrible in this game. He threw 2 picks. I think that the biggest winner from this game, and I've seen this on Twitter, so this is not an original idea, is probably Michael Penix. Because if Kirk Cousins performs as bad as he did this game, granted, I will say that the Steelers defense, especially their D line, pressured him 16 times, and that's likely because of that was because of TJ Watt, of how good he is.
It looked like he owed TJ Watt lunch money. Like it looked.
Yeah, like we'll see if Kirk Cousins is really this bad, like in a couple weeks. And I think that if he's really that bad, Michael Penix is definitely gonna, be starting, and he is a very much intriguing asset because of his legs for deeper leagues at the quarterback position. And by that point, if he ends up starting, it could be midseason. There could be more quarterback injuries, and he may end up seeing 10-team starting value. because the weapons that he has, aka Ray McLeod, are very good on this team. But in terms of we'll talk about Bijan in a little bit, but in terms of like the wide receivers here, like this just reminds me of Arthur Smith's offense, and I'm very upset.
Fuck Ray
I don't know.
McLeod.
What do you think about it?
That's what I think. I mean, I just Kirk Cousins looked so ass that I don't even think you can like
Mhm.
critically examine what the hell happened here. Bijan looked good, so that's dope. But I mean, London had 3 targets. Like it just
Yeah,
what the hell is going on? Kyle Pitts had to
yeah.
beg for the ball on his touchdown. Like he's like, please, I'm over here, please. And Kirk Cousins still almost fucked it up. So
I know.
I love Kirk. Kirk Thuggins. Like, I mean, you like that? I like that, but I don't like what I saw here. So hopefully they figure it out. I have a lot of Pitts, a lot of
Mhm.
London, specifically in Dynasty. Didn't really draft a whole hell of a lot of him at his round 2 cost in redraft, but Dynasty had a lot of him since his rookie year. I hope they figure it out because this is not what was promised at all.
No, it certainly was not. But once again, it's also week one. It
Yeah, I'm
was
not
one of the
worrying too
worst
much.
passing weeks of all time since I think
Just horrible.
2013. So overall, I think that especially for pass catchers, we give a little leeway for the first couple of weeks. Um, yeah, so we'll kind of move on from that game.
Yeah, that game sucks.
Um,
Another
this
ass
game
game.
made me no, all right, all right. It was an ass game, but as a Pats fan, I can say that I'm very happy that we won because Jacoby Brissett is some hot ass. But the Patriots take down the Cincinnati Bengals 16-10 here, and I'm going to just say it straight up. This was mainly due to New England like this defense playing very well, but also a lot of lapses on the ends of the Cincinnati Bengals in terms of turnovers because there was 2 fumbles and they happened in key areas in the red zone. So it led to them not even scoring 3 points. It led to them scoring 0. So Jacoby Brissett was really bad. Like he just didn't look like all that great. Like, yes, he was safe, and he did what he had to, but he looked very slow when he scrambled. He was not completing many passes. And this was just the Ramondre show. Like Ramondre got insane volume here. He got 3 targets, 3 receptions, only 6 yards, but we take those 3 receptions, and he had 25 carries for 120 yards and a touchdown. I think that it's safe to say that he could be like, if this continues, he could end up, being a back end RB1 by the end of this year. For those of you that drafted him in 0 RBs, still week 1, so we'll still see. But the volume is certainly encouraging because he is the main focal point of the offense. Boyd, our boy Javon Baker didn't even. He was deemed inactive. But what do you think about New England's pass catching here?
That shit stank. I
That's
mean,
exactly what we thought it'd
it
be.
fucking smells, dude. Like it's not good. I I hope you enjoyed your 1 win of the season because like you caught the Bengals week 1. That is like prime. It's like a bye week basically. Like that's prime
Yeah.
time win right there. Ramondre looked great. Besides that, Jalen Polk only had 1 catch, so I'm sad there. Douglas wasn't really
Mm-hmm.
involved. They just spread the ball a lot, and their offense looked
Yeah.
not great. Besides when
Mm-hmm.
Ramondre ran it, Ramondre looked pretty solid. But I don't. I
Yeah.
also don't really know how many game scripts that Ramondre's gonna get, where they're ahead like this, and then. But at the same time, he's also part of why they got ahead, so I'm not really too worried
Yeah.
about that. Ramondre is good. I mean, he had 3 catches, only 6 yards, but we
Yeah.
don't look at that part. That doesn't confirm my bias.
Well, I mean, one thing last year is that even when they were down, he was getting a lot of dump offs and like
Oh
screen
yeah, for
passes.
sure. He'll
So
be
yeah,
involved in the
he'll
passing game
probably
if
get.
they're losing.
Yeah, I think he's pretty game script insulated just because he'll just end up getting more usage in the passing game if they're down because they can't really throw it downfield. But I think that another thing is that because of Jacoby Brissett in a win like this was this bad, I think that unless Drake May is actually that horrible, I don't think that we see Drake May sit on the bench like, beyond week 8. I think that as long as, if they start if they start winning games, or excuse me, if they start losing games at a high rate, like they end up going 6 straight losses, like Drake May is going to probably see the field sooner than later. But if they're having success with Jacoby Brissett, they may just end up riding with him until it doesn't work anymore. But I'd be happy if this team ends, friggin' 7-10. Like I just don't want to see.
If I was a Patriots fan and they finished 7-10, I would be pissed because their team sucks, dude. They need to go 0-17 and get the first pick and take somebody. They can't go 7-10 and take another fucking offensive tackle with the 17th pick. It doesn't work, man. You gotta suck. Pull the Lions, tank for 30 years.
I don't know. I just think because it's a new regime, you gotta establish some form of
For
positivity. But I
sure,
do
but
get the
they
whole
also
wanting a
have
good pick.
I'm not saying intentionally tank. No NFL team will
Oh yeah, I know
intentionally.
what you mean. I
But
know what you
as
mean.
one of the Lions sucked, especially when they first traded for Goff, I was like, all right, I hope that
Hmm.
Goff blows. Let's tank. Let's draft Justin Fields. Glad they didn't do that. And
Yeah.
but the tanking part that worked.
So yeah, I mean, definitely happy in Motor City. But moving on to the Cincinnati Bengals, we'll kind of briefly touch on this. Joe Burrow had not a great game. He did fumble the ball once, didn't lose it though. Didn't throw a touchdown, didn't throw an interception. A lot of this was mainly due to his skills players losing the ball. Also, that touchdown that got called back on Gesicki was a little bit frustrating because that was a great catch. It just ended up getting reversed.
That was a hell of a play. Bust out the gritty and
Yeah,
everything.
I definitely think that Gesicki could see a little bit more usage if T. Higgins is out again, because I didn't really see much inspiration from Andre here. Iosivas, is that how you say his last name? Iosivas. I don't know how to say it because
Andre.
I've never. Yeah, I'm just gonna call him Andre. Um, what like in terms of Zach Moss and Chase Brown here, like Chase Brown did get used in the passing game, but Zach Moss also did here. Like, do we just kind of chalk this up to like just week one variance? Because I really didn't get much out of this game for this running back room.
I thought that I have Chase Brown in my home league, and I'm not happy. Like how we talked about in the running back thing, when they were going at equal cost, I absolutely preferred Zach Moss, and this is kind
Hmm.
of why. Got most of the rushing work, ended up getting the opportunity in the touchdown. I think that's kind of how it's going to be. Hopefully, Chase Brown can continue to carve out a role, but was
Boyd.
just he's getting you. What's up?
Oh, sorry, it just froze there for a second, so I didn't
Mine's
know
been
if
lagging,
you
dude.
still.
Mine's been lagging as well. You keep talking really fast. I don't know. StreamYard is not a fan
Oh,
of us,
okay.
but I just figured that this is how the workload is kind of going to be. And I am, as someone who has Chase Brown in the home league, I am hoping that he can further carve out a role. But it seems like Zach Moss is the guy that they
Hmm.
prefer, and I expect that to continue for the next couple weeks. Hopefully,
Hmm.
if you have Chase Brown, you're hoping that he can, carve out a bigger role, maybe even usurp him. But if you have Zach Moss, you're hoping that he can run hot enough to keep him off his heels.
Hmm. For sure. In terms of Jamar Chase here, like mediocre performance for Jamar Chase.
Gross that out for this.
12.2 PPR points. But yeah, I'm kind of glad that he did get at least some form of usage. And he did look pretty decent considering he didn't really practice much. This whole offseason. So hopefully that situation gets resolved soon. We can see T. Higgins back and hopefully see this offense, kind of turning up a notch. So moving on, now, this was a game that I particularly enjoyed seeing highlights for because I constantly was refreshing to see if the app was glitched make sure that it was indeed Josh Allen only attempting 5 passes in the first half. But we see the Buffalo Bills take down the Cardinals 34-28. Boyd, I'll let you kick this one off and starting with the Arizona passing game.
I gotta talk about it. I mean, Marvin Harrison did absolutely nothing. Michael
Uh,
Wilson had the touchdown, 1 yard, one catch, 5 yards touchdown. Trey Bright had 9 targets though, so that was cool. Trey Bright showed usage. He didn't really have a great actual fantasy day, but usage was there. Looks strong. I think he has a very, very strong case to be tight end 2 rest of the year, even tight end 1 if you want to make him that. I wouldn't make him tight end 1, but I think at very least he was already for me 3 or 4. Now I think he's
mhm.
2 or 3. So, I mean the usage was very strong. If anybody had any concerns about how much usage you'd see with Marv on the field, I think he not obviously can't absolutely eliminate any risk after 1 game, but I think he's starting to quiet those concerns which is nice to see because I've always been a big fan of his since he was a prospect. Had a lot of him from rookie drafts, so it was awesome when he exploded back half of the year. Yeah, that just
Mhm.
Greg Dortch season, man. It's just that's kind of all
My
there really is
man.
to say. Like Greg Dortch saw the ball a lot, Marv didn't. That's not going to be atypical as things continue. They didn't take Marvin
Mhm.
Harrison fourth overall, so that way he could have one catch. It's not happening.
Yeah, and he did have like he was wide open at the very end. That could have been
Abs
an easy
wide open, yeah.
touchdown. But this is also another thing where that 1-2 turn, I was never taking him at. I was taking him at the 2-3 turn, which I had in one league. I'm not worried. Obviously, it's very annoying, but this is what happens with wide receivers, or excuse me, rookie wide receivers. They tend to start off slow, but not this slow. But I also think that we'll see hopefully better days to come. Like Boyd had just mentioned, they didn't take him as high as they did just to let him run routes aimlessly on the field.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the running back room, though, I was encouraged to see some usage from Trey Benson here, but James Conner is the clear workhorse, and he also is getting some passing game volume. I think that James Conner is a great, RB2 to have. He will likely get every single red zone carry that they get. He gets used in the passing game. Not particularly efficient, didn't look horrible, but he, got stuffed quite a bit in this game. Trey Benson, the couple of carries that he did get, he looked very good. He also did get one catch. So I think that him and DeMarcado, if James Conner were to ever go down with his lengthy injury history, I think both of them would be worth adding. I'm not really too sure who. It could be a 50-50 split, but I think that both will hopefully get, like, Benson will likely get more of the carries, whereas DeMarcado might get more of the targets. But we'll see. It is week one, and that's also just kind of speculating with handcuffs. Now, and if we're moving over to Buffalo, we have Josh Allen, and like I mentioned before, he had attempted only 5 passes in the first half. I thought that was bananas to read, considering
Yeah,
he only attempted 23 the entire game, and they still ended up with 34 points when Arizona had only 1 turnover, and that was a Kyler fumble. I don't really have much to take away from this game in terms of the pass catching. I think it was just a lot of on the ground, like Josh Allen scrambling. They handed it off to James Cook. Like, I'm not taking much out of this game in terms of the pass catchers. I did just chalk it up to week one variance and kind of move on for it. I don't know if you had any additional thoughts on that.
Yeah, it was nice to see Keon Coleman be involved right from the first game.
Mm-hmm.
Besides that, though, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not worried about Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, I agree. I also think, though, that Ray Davis getting some touches in this game kind of displays that he is the likely handcuff if James Cook were to ever go down. So, like, if you're in a much deeper league and you have a zero RB team, he could be a worthwhile stash. That was just kind of one of those things that, it's just information that we're getting from these games that could help us, in those leagues where, every move that you make matters, and you don't have the benefit of being in a 10-team league with waiver wires that have, decent options almost every single week. So moving on, man, oh man, this was an interesting game. We have the
Oh
Chicago
God,
Bears beating the Tennessee Titans 24-17 while simultaneously only putting up 148 total offensive yards in the entire game. Now, Will Levis was brutal to watch in this game. He had 3 turnovers, 1 fumble, 2 interceptions. One of them was a pick six that led to, the just huge turning point in the game. He looked awful. Like, I would chalk, this up to being a bad week one for the pass catchers. I wouldn't really look that much into it for the pass catchers just yet. But Will Levis looks really bad. Like, I hope that he could at least turn around some bit for those that are holding on to, Tennessee Titans, hopefully making the wild card. But I don't know. He just doesn't look like the answer. I think that this might be the last year in the league where he ends up being a starter. But it is week one, but he did not show much. He showed, like, regression from last year, like his pocket presence, the amount of times that he would back up. This was just something I saw on Twitter. The amount of times he would back up and not move back into the pocket once the tackles kind of collapsed in. He would move
yeah.
towards the tackles and then just make an off bounce throw. And it was not great. So in terms of the running backs, though, I'll leave that to you because that was the one positive from this team.
Will Levis did give us the meme of the year though with the like wide
Oh
receiver
yeah, it's
pick
just
and
up
he's
on
just
the
on
ground.
his knees and he's just like, oh my fuck. Like, yeah, dude, that you did that. Congrats. Running backs though, Tony Pollard is toting that rock. They said that it was
Hmm.
going to be no starter, equal, their co-starters kind of thing is what they said. Did not look like that. So I don't know. If you're Tajay Spears, you're probably a little miffed, probably a little upset. I don't blame you. But Tony Pollard, yeah, they paid him not a lot of money, but pretty decent money for a running back. So
Hmm.
they seem like they're gonna want to use him. I don't expect him to vastly outwork Tajay Spears like this every week. I think Tajay's got to be involved, especially after what he showed last year. But yeah, first week he did not get involved much. Pollard got the touchdown. Pollard got a lot of the work. Was not
Hmm.
great to be a Spears manager.
No, it was not. And in other news, it wasn't also great to be having a single Bears player manager this week because Caleb Williams didn't even throw for 100 yards in this game. He threw under 50% accuracy. I think it was or just over 50% accuracy. I think that I'm not worried at all with Caleb Williams. I think that he was playing way too conservatively in this game. It didn't end up coming to bite them because they did end up getting the win, courtesy of their defense and special teams. But I think that if you exercise a little bit of patience with these Chicago pass catchers, obviously it sucks that Rome Odunze had went down, but I think this offense is definitely in store for better games, like way better games than this. But I think that we should temper expectations for the short term in terms of these Chicago pass catchers.
Yeah, it was pretty
So,
disappointing. Pretty disappointing. I have Caleb in the home league. Not a great,
oh damn,
not a great day.
no, certainly not.
Their
I
offense
mean,
looked
the
like
targets. Yeah, their offense did look really bad, but the targets for their wide receivers, like DJ Moore getting 8 and Keenan Allen getting 11, is great to see. For those two guys, especially now that like Rome is going to be out is week to week. Those guys should be targeted heavily. Hopefully, the quality in the upcoming weeks is a little bit better.
yeah, hopefully.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. If I did, you had just kind of
I'm
froze, and I thought
lagging,
you had stopped
so
talking.
I
So,
don't I don't know what's going on with the
okay.
internet. It's like you keep talking fast and then it just keeps
Hmm.
freezing. So if I do that again, I'm sorry.
Hmm.
It's just not I don't know. It's not our day. We're not allowed to
No,
record
you're
anything
good.
ever.
You're good. I've been hearing you the majority of the time. It's just like sometimes
Okay.
your camera will freeze, and then sometimes you'll like come in a little bit later.
Yeah, sorry. My apologies.
No, you're good. Um, do you want to talk about DeAndre Swift here? Do you have any comments on him? I really didn't have much to take away from this
Yeah,
game.
I got nothing. He got the
Mm,
bulk of the work, which is to be expected. You're just hoping that their
mm,
offense looks better, which it should. So just kind of
yeah.
can't really trade him. So
Mhm.
sit
And if you
Brett.
had Chicago's defense and special teams this week, kudos to you. I
Yeah,
lost
GG.
because of them, but they definitely won you this week because they put up 27 on ESPN and Sleeper.
Tough.
So moving on, we had a very close game. The Houston Texans take down the Indianapolis Colts 29-27. Boyd, I'll let you kind of kick things off here with the Houston Texans.
Stephon Diggs had a couple tutties, I think a lot of people were very curious about how the wide receiver room would look, and it looked like it was a very even spread, which I think doesn't really surprise me. I don't know if it surprises any other people, but it doesn't really surprise me. Nico's on top, so I'm happy. I have him in
Hmm.
the home league as well, so it was nice to see him have a good day. Wish he would have caught one of those touchdowns. But, Diggs ended up catching both of them. And I saw an interesting stat about the air yards. And I think I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think Stephon Diggs had like 9 air yards.
Yeah,
And
it was
that
something very.
Nico and Dell had like 80 or 100, both of them, and that's
Mhm.
just insane. So I don't imagine that Dick is going to see what he saw this week, but high variance room. I think with the 3 wide receivers they have, all of them are good. So there's going to be a lot of spike weeks, overall. But I think Nico is very much so the wide receiver one, in my opinion, and I think Dell and Diggs are going to be fighting back and forth kind of for their spike weeks. But I think Nico can be fairly reliable in this offense and fairly consistent for fantasy, as shown
Mhm.
today. Or not today, but this
Yeah,
week.
and Yeah, Nico looks great. Like the catches
Yeah,
that he was making were insane. Like they
crazy.
weren't just like some of them were like he was just
Alpha
catching it
shit,
over
dude.
two people. Yeah, I was very encouraged to see that. It was certainly nice to see how well they spread the ball out. Obviously, Tank Dell's end like stat line didn't end up being that great, but he also did have 2 carries for 19 yards along with his 7 targets that only amounted to 3 receptions. So it's nice to see that he's still getting usage with those 2 other receivers there. One thing that really stands out here is Joe Mixon. 30 rushing attempts for 159 yards and a touchdown. Now, this is mainly due to them being up for a majority of the time. Like it was still a close game throughout the way, but they were always in control of the game. Um, I think Joe Mixon, as long as he's in this offense and they are up, he's going to get volume like this. Like I don't think he's going to get 30 carries a game, but he could get close to 16 to 20 a game, potentially get a couple receptions like he did here. And I think that he could end up proving myself and other doubters wrong with this volume, because if he gets this type of volume in a great offense, like I don't see the reason for him not to be an RB1 this year. He will likely not be as efficient as 5.3 yards a carry, but then again, he didn't have like that one breakaway run to save his, averaging. This was pretty much just him breaking off 4, 5, 6, 7 yards at a time. So it was certainly encouraging to see. I have him nowhere, but sometimes it's nice to be wrong because it means that a guy is really good. So that's all I have to say on that. AR man, do you
Yeah,
want to talk about him?
dude's electric. 9 completions, but had an absolute day. One of them, the pass to Alec Pierce, play of the week in
Mm,
my opinion. That thing was
yeah,
gross. Pocket kind of fell on him. He fell over, lost his footing a little bit, recovered it, and then just immediately uncorks it. He's just such a special athlete. Great for fantasy, as proven by this week's game. If you
hmm
have AR, you're happy. You just gotta hope he stays healthy. Obviously, I hope everyone
yeah.
stays healthy, but for how fun AR is to watch, I really hope that he stays healthy.
Yeah, I mean, considering he had an interception, his rushing upside and deep playability, like home run ability like that, he put up 27 fantasy points with, only completing 9 passes. I think that there needs to be tuning up in those short and medium routes, but I definitely am very encouraged as an AR, manager in one league, to have him. He is definitely a game changer, like Lamar is. He's just not as great of a passer as Lamar is, but those legs could change a game at any point. He did have that one where he bulldozed forward into the end zone on a 4th down and 4th and goal. So that's always encouraging to see a guy put his body on the line like that, similar to how Josh Allen would on the goal line. So hopefully he can, keep up the good work in terms of these deep plays and rushing. One thing I am encouraged by now, this is obviously Jonathan Taylor had a mediocre performance. Like his touchdown saved his line this game, so I won't really go too much into that. That is just kind of one of those things where week one not that great, but we'll see later on. Is Michael Pittman Jr. Now, Michael Pittman Jr. didn't have a great line, only 4 receptions for 31 yards, but he did have 8 targets. So if Anthony Richardson can, improve upon, like, one, they pass it a little bit more. Two, also improve the accuracy of those passes. I think Michael Pittman could still be very good for fantasy. It'll be a lot more variable than we saw with Gardner Minshew, but he still is the alpha of this wide receiver room.
Yeah.
That one is one of those things where I think that I wouldn't necessarily sound the alarm bell yet with Michael Pittman Jr. because those, draft day concerns are still there, but the targets are certainly very encouraging, and it still shows that they want to see him in the intermediate to short area as the main go-to guy. Boy, do you mind if I take Adonai Mitchell?
Yeah, go for it, dude. Yeah.
So he was the next target earner, and he did have 5 targets, only in the stat line of 1 reception for 2 yards. But
Have
I
a
did see the
day.
stat where he had the most average separation of any wide receiver in week one, courtesy of PFF, and he also had 2 instances where he did burn the corner that was on him, and AR just overthrew him, and they both would have been like long touchdowns, similar to Doolin's and Pierce's. So Adonai Mitchell, if AR doesn't overthrow him on those two, could have had 3 receptions for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think that with Anthony Richardson's capability of throwing it deep and having these deep passes, I think that Adonai Mitchell is a great speculative ad because nobody's going to be going for him because of his stat line, but he could end up paying off very well because he did have the targets, or excuse me, target share, only 5 targets, but he did show promise in terms of the ability to separate, and he have that big playability. So I was encouraged, even though I was not starting him in any league.
For sure, for sure.
So, all right, we've exhausted that game, so we'll move on. In this game, we saw the battle of the 2 of the 3 Florida teams. Miami Dolphins take down the Jacksonville Jaguars 20-17 on a game-winning field goal by Jason Sanders. Running back drama in Jacksonville. Are you buying into it, Boyd?
Nah, Tank Bigsby doesn't fear me. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't fear Tank Bigsby. Tank Bigsby fears me. Let me correct myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of Tank
Gotcha.
Bigsby. Travis Etienne's the guy. Tank Bigsby did have a good day though. So, I mean,
Hmm.
that if anything, it makes me feel better about some best balls and some nice leagues where I still have Tank Bigsby, knowing that he's can be a competent NFL player. Because after last year, I kind of had concerns. So it
Hmm.
was nice to see him actually be able to run the ball effectively.
Yeah, I definitely think he's worth an ad
Yeah,
in deeper leagues and not that high of a priority in more shallower leagues. But he'd be a great handcuff, 1, and 2, he may have some standalone value. We'll see how this pans out. But I don't think that Travis Etienne is in much danger just yet. He's been the go-to guy the last, this will be his 3rd season, or no, his 4th season, excuse me. And he's been very good in that time as a bell cow, one of the few bell cows left. So hopefully he can stay at that 60% running back usage. But I think we chalk this up to just riding the hot hand on a couple drives and then kind of reevaluating in a couple weeks. But Brian Thomas, man, I
looked
was so
great.
happy to see that touchdown.
Yeah, looked great.
A fantastic touchdown as it was. Like Trevor
Yeah.
Lawrence threw that ball way ahead, just in the right spot in the end zone. And Brian Thomas could have had 2 touchdowns in this game if Jalen Ramsey didn't, yank him down in the end zone after he got burnt.
Yeah, he's solid.
So, as a guy who drafted him in one league, I am very happy to see that this kind of usage. This was a very viable fantasy week. I wouldn't say I'm comfortable starting him going forward, but I am encouraged, and I would not try to sell him because you're not going to get enough for him.
Yeah,
And
don't
if you
sell
could buy him for really cheap, which I doubt you can, just because he's a rookie that scored a touchdown in his first week, I would say that if you drafted Brian Thomas, you could be in for a good second half of the season, maybe even sooner, if he ends up being the guy, because he looked like the guy in this game.
He looked good for sure.
Speaking of the guys, is Evan Engram no longer the guy here?
I don't even know. It was not the tight ends week. When's the National Tight End Day? That's what we need.
I
We need
was
that.
funny enough. I was pulling up my phone just to look that up.
Yeah, we need that
Uh,
because it was not their day. It was not. No tight ends did well, really, unless your name is like Isaiah Likely or Brock Bowers, or it just wasn't a good day. Toby
yeah, it's
Parkinson.
the 4th Sunday of October, so we got some time. So hopefully they turn it up before.
I gotta wait that long for Mark Andrews to get a touchdown. That's crazy.
Well, we'll just go to
But
left tackle
yeah,
day and he'll score it.
I don't know what was going on with Evan Ingram. Trevor Lawrence targeted the shit out of him last year, so I'm gonna imagine that they're gonna get back to that eventually. Maybe not, this as many targets because Christian Kirk is
Hmm.
back, and now they got Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis, and we got to share the love. But Evan Ingram
Right.
should still be at least the second target earner. So I imagine that this was just kind of a you know bottom of the barrel for variance, and there's gonna be spike weeks coming.
Hmm. Yeah, and he did also get 4 targets in the day, just as
Oh yeah,
Brian Thomas did. He just didn't equate to
yep.
anything. One last thing I do want to say, I forgot about this, is Travis Etienne also should have had another touchdown in this game where he fumbled it on the goal line,
Skill
and that
issue.
could have also that could have also attributed to the following drive when Tank Bigsby got all of the snaps. So that could have just been fumbling, bench you for a little bit, just so that you let you know you can't do that. But that's another thing that I'm not too worried about Travis Etienne unless the fumbling becomes an issue, and then we'll reevaluate. But Boyd, I know this is going to be something that you're going to be happy to talk about, so I will let you have at it with Miami Dolphins.
Jalen Waddle's having a great start to the year. Dude was hurt forever, but 5 catches, 100 yards, didn't get a touchdown. Ideally, we like to see the touchdown. Touchdowns are going to come, so the spike weeks are going to come. But right here, Ryan put both could end in top 12. I think they both do end in the top 12. It's obviously not too much of a hot take. But yeah, I thought they looked like the absolute, like those were the guys. And I
Mhm.
thought they both looked great. Some great catches. Obviously, the target share is vastly different, but Waddle is the kind of guy where he doesn't need that kind of spam. He doesn't need the targets because he kind of just tends to make the plays, kind of like an Ayuk kind of thing. Where if you look at Ayuk, doesn't really have a ton of targets, but still put up that many yards and is in a good offense and is effective. So I like both
Mhm.
of them. They both had a great day, even with the stuff that happened to Tyreek earlier in the day. So going
Yeah,
out there having 130 yards, a touchdown probably felt good for him.
for sure. Yeah, I was very encouraged for both of them to see that. And they just anytime they touch the ball, it could be a home run. But that's the thing with
Every
this
time.
whole offense. Anybody that touches the ball
Yeah,
could
it's
just house it. That's
crazy.
just how they're built. It's
How do
it's
you play
very
defense
fun to
against
watch.
that?
I know. It's literally it's a match made in heaven for Madden. That's literally what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, it's great.
But speaking of, just those home run plays, Devon Achan, excuse me, he looked great in this game. Wasn't efficient on the ground, but he got 7 targets, 7 receptions for 76 yards, and that's just a PPR machine all the way. I think he's questionable going into Thursday. I think that we're recording this on Tuesday night. I think that that's just more of a line of caution because they are playing on Thursday. I think we'll find out more based on if they practice tomorrow on
Yeah, I
Wednesday.
hope they practice
But
tomorrow. 2 days of no
yeah,
practicing is a little nerve wracking, just a little
yeah.
bit.
Uh, A-Chain's nursing some ankle issues, and Mostert's nursing,
Old age.
a joint. Yeah, he hurt his shoulder, which is why he didn't get a lot of usage in this game. So we shouldn't read a whole lot into that just yet. Um, but if both of them are out, or if one of them is out, I believe that Jeff Wilson is an ad in either case. I think that Jalen Wright is also an ad if both of them are out. But I think Jeff Wilson here is the priority if both of these guys are out because he was clearly the third back in this game with Jalen Wright being an inactive. Um, I think that Jalen Wright will get usage, and if one of them is out, and even more usage if both of them are out. But he's kind of more of that just handcuff with that has that home run playability because he does have that 4.3 speed. But I think that any running back that's starting in this offense, 1 and 2, are always viable any given week. Regardless, this is just going to be the running backs are just going to be a team of glass cannons. That's what they are. They all have injury histories. They all have big playabilities. When they're on the field, they'll be great, but they will be off the field, a decent amount of time. So we'll see
Yeah, the life of a running back.
for sure. Moving on. Moving on.
Moving on.
So here, yeah. So we have. I don't know if you just seen that, but I had just skipped this game, went to the next one. But
Little goof.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, I'm not. I'm gonna just kind of we're gonna just probably try to talk about this for 2 minutes. But
Yeah,
yeah,
this
New
should be
Orleans
like,
absolutely
yeah.
smacks Carolina. Bryce Young looked horrible. The running backs horrible. There was 2 spread out. Don't start any of them. The only good takeaway was Legette's usage. He led their team in targets. He had one of the highest targets per route run this year, or excuse me, in week 1 at 30%. And I think that him and Deontay Johnson both being the highest target earners, if Bryce Young could actually, figure it out, they'll be viable. But I think Legette is the only one that I'd be looking to be encouraged by in this game because he is a rookie, saw the most receptions, most targets.
Yeah, I like Leggett.
Boyd, do you
Yeah,
want?
very positive about Leggett. I don't really. This game's gross. They had 10 points in a
Yeah.
57-point game. Leggett had a lot of targets without playing a lot of routes, a lot of snaps. So
Mm-hmm.
that's good. Hopefully, if he plays more snaps, he gets more targets, and obviously just goes up. And then all my best ball shares are saved. Deontay Johnson. I like Deontay Johnson. I just don't. I don't know. I really hope that they figure it out on offense. And Chuba Hubbard
Mm-hmm.
is losing snaps to Miles Sanders. So that's where we're at. I just
Yeah, you can drop both.
you can't yeah, Hubbard, I don't even think because if he's splitting time on a bottom 3 offense with Miles Sanders, you can't really start him. Like, you're just I don't know.
No.
I don't know. I have no interest in any Panthers. I wouldn't even start Deontay next week. Like, I gotta see their offense
Mm-hmm.
not be absolutely bottom of the barrel for 1 week. Like, it could be average, and, like, that would be
Mm-hmm.
positive. So, yeah, I already
I
talked
agree.
about it too much. This game is gross.
Yeah, so I'll briefly go over to New Orleans and then we'll swiftly move on to the next game. But Derek Carr looked really good in this game. It's obviously hard to, gauge because the defense was just that shitty. Alvin Kamara had great usage both in the passing game and the running. He looks like he's still Alvin Kamara, so you'd be encouraged if you drafted him. Taysom Hill did have, 5 carries, which was encouraging. And he had 2 targets, only 1 reception for 1 yard. But I think that he's going to be a touchdown dependent, tight end streamer throughout the way. I do hope that they give him a little bit more usage, because then it'll be another viable tight end. Another guy that we'll talk about during the waiver scoops is Rashid Shaheed. Shaheed had 26% targets per route run. He only had 5 targets, 3 receptions for 73 yards and a touchdown. I think that he is the deep ball guy in this offense. And I think that if Derek Carr is capable of throwing the way he did in this game, I think he's definitely a viable, 12, 14 team guy to fill in at a flex. And if he ends up, garnering more targets and Olave takes a step back, which is another guy who I'm not worried about. We'll see. He could be a fantasy gold mine, but I definitely think that he's a higher medium priority target this week for waivers. All right. Another not so great game. We have the Minnesota Vikings taking over your New York Giants, 28-6. How about Sam Darnold? I'll let you start, but Darnold dimes.
I wrote a little piece about Darnold like a month ago, 3 weeks ago, and it basically just summarized like that. I'm not worried about Sam Darnold. Kevin O'Connell is really good scheme, really good. He's just really good at playing around whatever he has, with Nick Mullins, Dobbs, whatever. And I wasn't worried about Darnold, and obviously it was the New York Giants, but they have some good defensive pieces. Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, like they got a good defense. In theory, they got some big names there. So it was just nice to see him play like like an NFL quarterback and look solid out there. Obviously, I'm someone that has not been worried about Justin Jefferson. So, 60 yards, would have hoped for more than that. But he got the touchdown. He looked, like he's just Justin Jefferson. Like I'm not worried at all about him. And this isn't even like the type of game script where you really would see him get fed the ball a lot. I mean, it wasn't even close the entire time. It looked like they were playing like a Pee Wee team. It wasn't even fair. Aaron Jones looked good as well. He looked good out there. I want to make sure that that's stated as well because a lot of people just seem to forget that Aaron Jones is good at football. So it's always nice to talk about the fact that he's good. Ty Chandler also got some usage as well. He played a good amount of snaps. I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I think that the Vikings offense, it was the Giants, so obviously the asterisks, but I think the Vikings offense looked as advertised for me anyway, and I think it surprised quite a few people.
Yep. I think if you own Aaron Jones or Justin Jefferson, you're certainly encouraged. I'd be a little concerned, Aaron Jones, just because we want to see him against a better defense, but it is encouraging to see this type of, volume. Moving on to the New York Giants, Daniel Jones, he just looked awful, man. I laughed so hard when he threw the pick on that bubble screen because I've done that shit like 5 times in NCAA 25. And that's just what it reminded me of because he didn't even think, he just threw it. He didn't even look. And it was just it was like the shortest pick six and fastest pick six I've ever seen. But yeah, Daniel Jones doesn't look like the answer. I think this might be his last year in New York, but we'll see. It is week 1, but the one thing I am encouraged about was the Giants wide receivers, though, because Wan'Dale Robinson, 12 targets. He only ended the day with, 10.4 PPR points. Actually, no, excuse me, 11.8 because he also did have that one rush. But 29.7% targets per route run is great to see from Wan'Dale. I think Malik Neighbors being there definitely helps free him up. And he's another guy who I think is another like glass cannon where I see the talent there. He's just always hurt. And I did try to acquire him in quite a few spots. I actually acquired him from you in one of our leagues in a much larger deal.
I can't remember the trade,
it was the one I got roasted for when I got Hawk and Wan'Dale, and I gave up JT and Pop Douglas.
Cooked
on a team. I wasn't competing.
Twitter said so.
Yeah, Twitter said so. But I think that I'm also encouraged by Malik Neighbors leading this team in receiving yards. He looks great.
Neighbors looks fucking great. Like dude looks good at football. Not surprising at all. Daniel Jones. That quote I believe from Neighbors was, "I don't know what's going on back there." So, they're already saying that Daniel Jones is the starting quarterback for week 2. If they're saying that after week 1, Drew Lock is taking his job. If Drew Lock's not healthy, they will get Tommy DeVito out there. If both of them are not healthy, they will sign Ryan Tannehill. He's not playing football if he keeps
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. The wide receivers were encouraging, but the quarterback throwing to them was not.
Yeah,
And Devin Singletary, not in a great offense, looked bad, doesn't it? Like he did get some passing work, but I think you bench him unless
it's
he's
Devin
like your best
Singletary.
option. Yeah.
Like I just outside of best ball, like
Not
I was
great.
drafting some after ADP and best ball, but like redraft, bad offense, hard to feel confident about starting him. So I was avoiding him, and this kind of
Hmm.
why. Obviously, like week one victory laps are not like I'm not trying to victory lap. Just this is
Right.
concerns me. I would not feel confident if I had Devin Singletary in my team.
Yeah, definitely not. Alrighty, so moving on. Man, some of these games are really bad. I keep looking at these scores. So we had the Los
Yeah.
Angeles Chargers beat the Las Vegas Raiders 22-10. Gardner Minshew looked pretty decent. He had one of the highest, passing yard stat lines of the day. Only one touchdown, one interception, but the Zamir White Alexander Madison debacle is kind of making my head spin because I'm not 100% sold on Madison, but I'm also very intrigued by the usage that he saw. I wanted to kind of pick your brain on that.
I don't think Zamir White is like from my perspective. I don't think he's the kind of guy who is going to take a lion's share of the work in any backfield. And I think, despite the disappointment last year from Alexander Madison, he has proven for years now that he is a NFL level running back. Like he's at the very least like an RB2 on a team, and like that's fine. Like he's and I think this right here, I am surprised by the receiving usage. I was mixing in some late, like round 18 Madison in best ball, so this probably helped me
Mhm.
in some teams for week one. But I definitely did not see him coming out and getting 6 targets and just like as well as also getting, a handful of rushing attempts and just being involved in the offense. Especially like, I mean, the Raiders are going to be in trailing game scripts. That's what they do. They're the Raiders.
Mhm.
They're the Raiders that are starting Gardner Minshew. So I imagine that Alexander Madison could probably have some sneaky PPR upside, and if like Zamir White were to go down, that would even boost him up even more because then like he would get some more the rushes obviously, and then Dylan Law would take some as
Mhm.
well. But yeah, I was I've never really been a Zamir White guy, but I was enlightened and impressed by what Alexander Madison showed. Obviously, you can't really like
Mhm.
expect that touchdown that he scored to happen like that, but the usage there was promising for all the
Yeah,
zero
I mean,
RB.
even if he didn't have that touchdown, he would have still had 10 PPR points. So that's still,
Yeah.
a good fill-in option.
Exactly, yeah, if you faded RB, um, Alexander Madison is a very, like, interesting waiver pickup if you're looking for just to have somebody, like, to fill in. I might pick him up. I right now my
Mhm.
RB2 is Chase Brown, might pick him up. I have Jamal Williams as well on my bench who I picked up, like, Sunday morning, but I'll probably just
Mhm.
drop them all for Madison if I had to guess. That's what I'm gonna
Mhm.
attempt to do, just because, yeah, like, I just don't really and I have Dowdle as well. Dowdle is just not we'll talk about that in a second, but, yeah, I
Yeah.
think Madison's a worthwhile PPR, waiver pickup, especially if you're the guy that just doesn't really draft just a RB2 like I did. Yikes.
Mhm. I definitely agree on that. So moving over to the pass catchers of the Raiders, there was some encouraging things. I mean, Devontae Adams had a mediocre day. Not much to talk about there. Would have been saved by a touchdown, but still okay for his standards. Jacoby Myers had 3 receptions for 61 yards, with a lot deeper targeting. So I definitely think that Jacoby Myers is still viable with Minshew at the helm. I definitely don't think that he's going to be useless. I think he's kind of one of those, like, if you have multiple wide receivers in a flex, he could be like a spot flex. He's a good wide receiver 4 or 5, but I'd be encouraged to have him as like any depth on my team. But Brock Bowers, though, that was what I was most encouraged by. Led the team in targets in his very first game, 6 receptions, 58 yards, no touchdowns, but I think those that drafted Brock Bowers as, like, they didn't get one of those top tight ends. Like, I think he ended up probably still selecting a guy who could finish top 6 in tight ends this year, because seeing that type of usage in your very first game as a rookie tight end is insanely good. Like, they were putting him out wide. He was, he's just the rack monster that he is, and he's just going to be a defensive nightmare everywhere he goes. And if they're going to target him that heavy in like his very first game, certainly encouraged with the rest of season outlook. Still week 1, but I'm very encouraged.
For sure. For sure. Best tight end prospect of all
Mhm.
time, seeing 8 targets, nearly 60 yards in his first game is very, very good to
Yeah,
see.
I agree. So moving on over to the Chargers, we have the we're going to probably be discussing this all year, the J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards show. They basically 10 and 11 carries to Dobbins to Edwards 11. Dobbins had a significantly more efficient day. He broke for that long run, which was the second fastest time behind Saquon Barkley, clocked by running back in week 1. So it's safe to say that he does have who he was prior to his injury. It's nice to see that he is capable of breaking off for such fast runs. Even though he did get caught from behind, it's still nice to see that for a guy who has had such bad injury luck, it's nice to see that he's still capable of, being useful. And he had a great fantasy day. I definitely think he's a great priority to go and pick up and see where it goes. I would be cautious going forward because it was still 1 week and he didn't really separate himself. It was a very, very close split between him and Gus Edwards. But boy, did you have any additional thoughts on the running back situation?
Yeah, I thought J.K. Dobbins looked great. I really did, and that made me really happy to see. Just seeing like a guy go down with the Achilles tear, and then in his first game back a year later, like the first game last year towards Achilles, first game a year later, a performance like that, it just even if you just aren't a fan of the Chargers or aren't a fan of J.K. Dobbins, I hate Ohio State. Like I just and I absolutely loved seeing him go out there and just dominate. If
Mhm.
he's somehow on your waivers, yeah, absolutely pick him up. Yeah, absolutely. Next week he gets the Chargers, so that's a smash spot. Could have another great week, and then
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure he hits a patch of I think they play the Steelers and then the Chiefs. Couple tough defenses there, so could totally maybe do a quick little flip. But after that, I think they have to play the Broncos twice, so there's some easy run defenses in there for him. I think J.K. Dobbins, he was the one I preferred going into the season. In our last episode, we talked about that, and I just
Mhm.
the whole game was just really uplifting to see.
Yep, for sure. Do you want to discuss Lad McConkey as well?
Yeah, he looked good. Dude out he looked like the guy. Like not like I mean, but for the Chargers, he looked like the guy. Like
Yeah.
Josh Palmer, what was Josh Palmer doing? I wish Bick was here. I really wish Bick was here so we could talk about Josh Palmer. He did absolutely nothing.
No.
Nothing. And I don't know. I was really I had Lad going against me in my home league, so seeing his touchdown hurt, but gosh, dude, like dynasty perspective, it was really awesome seeing Worthy, Lad, Brian Thomas just all have quality first games, all for various reasons. Because
Mhm.
that was a clump tier in rookie draft, so it's just really nice to see young
Yeah.
talent like start the season well.
Yeah. Keon Coleman also had a great game too.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
touchdown, but
I
it's
forgot
still
about Coleman.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, and then the the next leading receiver was Quentin Johnson. That's just kind of
that's
funny.
crazy.
I'm
Hayden Hurst.
I honestly I pray for a redemption arc, but I kind of just chalk this up to just Quentin Johnson just getting a little usage, and because they don't have many options, we'll see how it goes on going
Redemption
forward.
arc would be
But
pretty awesome.
I'm not gonna look that much into it. I used to love him like before he came into the league, and then once he came into the league, I realized that he was not very great for NFL perspective at least. So I hope that he can redeem himself, like from just a
It would just be
NFL
awesome.
enjoyer
Just like
perspective.
everybody talks shit. Like I root for
Yeah.
chaos a lot of the time.
Hmm.
So seeing the guy that a lot of people hate on just go out there and just
Hmm.
pop off always makes me happy. So go for
For
it,
sure.
QJ.
Yep.
I sold him in every single dynasty league I had, but go for it, QJ.
I have him in one league just in case. But moving on, we have the Seattle Seahawks taking down the Denver Broncos 26-20. Um, man, just broken record this week, but another bad quarterback display. Like Bo Nix, 42 attempts, 26 completions for only 138 yards, 2 interceptions, only attempted 12 passes over 10 yards, and 2 of them, and he went 2 for 12 with also 2 INTs on those. Yeah, it was a rough rookie debut. But to be fair, Caleb Williams not as bad, didn't have a great debut either. I'm not saying that they're the same player. Please don't twist my words here,
You
but
said it.
I think, yeah, I think we can. Bo Nix did save his fantasy line somewhat with the rushing touchdown. I think that it was encouraging to see him use his legs every now and then, but I think we need to see a few more weeks of Bo Nix before we start sounding the alarm bells. We've already seen a year of Bryce Young, so I can pretty convinced he's kind of bad, but Bo Nix did not look that great here. Boyd, what do you think about the position players in this game?
I mean, Jaleel McLaughlin, he saw a lot of touches, but
Didn't do much with him though.
yeah, on the Broncos side, like it's hard to look at Javonte Williams and see the way he's being used and seeing the amount of touches he was given and just feel confident. It sucks because a lot of people was drafting him maybe as their RB2 if you're gonna like a hero RB and then you were wanting to grab somebody around that
hmm
ADP. So it just it's depressing, but he seems to really like McLaughlin. Esteban didn't get any work. I dropped him for Jamal Williams in the home league, so I just that dream is I don't know. We'll see if he starts to get more usage. It'll be a little more positive, but it's looking a little dead right now. Wide
hmm
receivers, you can't really start any of these wide receivers because it's not a good offense. Even if they have a good week, it's not going to be that good. We saw last year, Sutton had 10 touchdowns, and he still was like a low end wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4
hmm
play. Like it's just, and I'm just not interested on the Broncos side of the ball. But now we'll go to the Seahawks side of the ball. Ooh, shiny. I like Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker, good player. Zach Charbonnet, good handcuff. DK Metcalf, all right, solid fantasy wide receiver. JSN played a lot of snaps, played more than Tyler Lockett. Then you look at Tyler Lockett, led the team in receiving. So I don't know what's going on there with JSN, but we were hoping that he would play more than Lockett, and he did. And Lockett still outperformed him. So I don't know. The JSN thing is really starting to freak me out.
Yeah, I mean, Jason doesn't inspire much confidence in me right now. I do think that there's still the talent there, but I think we keep underestimating the longevity that Lockett has, and I think that as long as he's on the team, it's going to be a thorn in the side of JSN. I think that JSN could end up being a later, like a mid-career breakout candidate once he's not the third option. Because it's not to say that he's bad, but DK Metcalf and Lockett are clearly better and more trusted. And just to kind of put in perspective, Tyler Lockett, he only ran 20 routes. He only ran 20 routes and he had 7 targets, which equated to 35% targets per run, which is fourth in the week, only behind Cooper Kupp, Rashee Rice, and Garrett Wilson.
Rashee
So,
Rice was a cheat code.
yeah, I know. And I'm very happy to see Tyler Lockett do that well because I did draft him in a couple of places in best ball and won him redraft league just in case,
Yeah,
he's still Tyler
I
Lockett.
locked it. Yeah,
So I'm pretty encouraged to see, what the season is in store for him. I may end up starting this week because I have so many injuries in one league, but we'll see. DK Metcalf doesn't really scare me that much. I still think he's just DK Metcalf.
yeah. I mean, this is just part
Um,
of the DK Metcalf experience. Just a low variance.
yeah,
Or,
he'll have these
bad,
games.
bad variance game.
Yeah. I do think that one point to kind of point out is Zach Charbonnet's usage. Very inefficient on the ground, but he did have 8 carries, and he did have 2 receptions for 29 yards and that 1 touchdown. I think that if Kenneth Walker is to go down, Zach Charbonnet is like your priority number 1 because he's in a decent enough offense, and he's going to get the majority. Like Laviska Shenault is not going to get carries behind Zach Charbonnet. I think that he will basically be a bell cow if Kenneth Walker is ever to go down. But moving on, just to an effort to save a little more time, we have the Dallas Cowboys comfortably taking down your Cleveland Browns 33-17. Boyd, how about Zeke, man? How about him?
Yeah. I felt like the Rico Dowdle shark was like Rico Dowdle jumped the shark kind of when he started going ahead of Zeke in ADP on underdog, in my opinion. Because Zeke is he's just known there, and he's going to get this kind of work where he's going to get the red zone touch, and he's probably going to get the gross touchdown, but he's going to be the one that has the decent day for fantasy, and that's kind of what we saw here. He looked like late career Zeke. I really don't know what to say about that. Like it's just Ezekiel Elliott. It was kind of I don't know. I mean, it was kind of cool seeing him in a Cowboys jersey again. Maybe that's just I'm not even a Cowboys fan, but it just big
Mhm.
part of the last like 7 years of football has been him as a Cowboy.
Yeah.
So it was just cool seeing him back out there, and they liked him, so they gave him a lot of touches. Obviously, Dowdle got work, but just I was really hoping that Dowdle would like look substantially better than Zeke. Like the bet is that like I was hoping that he'd be better
Mhm.
than the guy who's not good, and it's just week 1 was not promising. I didn't start him week 1. Definitely won't start him week 2. Zeke is worth a start.
Yep. Zeke will definitely get a lot of those red zone carries, so we'll
Yeah.
see how it plans out the rest of the year. But CeeDee Lamb looked great. Like he didn't have
Oh
that great
yeah.
of a fantasy day, but he had 3 carries for 25 yards. They didn't manufacture him, but quite a few touches on end arounds, and he did lead their team in receiving with 10 targets, but only equated to 5 receptions. I think that CeeDee Lamb is still going to be a top 3 wide receiver. I would say that the usage is there. Wasn't a great, overall fantasy day, but it was encouraging to see how they were using him because I like they didn't use him a lot in those manufactured runs before, so that was pretty interesting to see. And then additionally, I think that a good pickup this week, medium priority, would be Brandon Cooks. He saw the next highest target share with 7 targets, and also Jake Ferguson did go down, so that could heighten his usage a little bit more. He only had 4 receptions for 40 yards, still had 7 targets, and he did have the lone receiving touchdown the Cowboys scored. So still there. Brandon Cooks, just a name that never seems to go away. Always seems to just kind of do his thing. Not the Brandon Cooks, that was amazing like several years ago, but he's still viable, and he could be a good fill-in wide receiver for, and we'll go from there.
The sneaky play.
And
Sneaky play.
yeah, the sneaky play. In terms of the Browns, though, man, oh man, Deshaun Watson looks pretty bad.
Yeah.
Still one
Yeah.
week, but I think the only encouraging thing that I could get out of this game was Jerome Ford. I mean, Jerome Ford looked great. I mean, he was not like overly efficient on the ground, but he did have that 1 touchdown, and he had 6 receptions for 25 yards. Now, some of that came off of Deshaun Watson just,
Being
not being all
ass.
that great, and also the pocket collapsing quite often on him. So there were some dump offs, but if Jerome Ford's going to get that usage, it's hopefully if Nick Chubb comes back, like he can, Nick Chubb gets a little bit of receiving work. I know he was never that type of guy when Kareem Hunt was there, but that's also because Kareem Hunt was Kareem Hunt. But like, if this is representative of how what Nick Chubb is going like usage is going to look like, I hope that Jerome Ford's doesn't get like retain this usage receiving wise. But that's just another positive that could be encouraging later on in the season. But that's all just speculation. It's kind of one of
Yeah.
those things where if you have Nick Chubb, I'd be encouraged. And Njoku got hurt week to week. Unfortunate if you have him, but at the same time, you didn't invest that high draft capital. So hopefully there's a tight end on the waiver that you can pick up, like likely. Boy, what do you think about Jerry Jeudy and Amari Cooper before we move on to the next game?
I think that they did such a great job that they went out and signed Kadarius Toney. Nah, I don't know why they signed Kadarius though. For real, I have a lot of Judy. Cool seeing him get the touchdown for best ball. Um, like the way they spread the targets is really weird. Like it's just they were the
Mm-hmm.
top 2 guys, so I don't see Tony beating out Judy at all. So I think they're still going to be the top 2 guys in the pecking order, especially with Njoku hurt. Bad, unlucky day for Amari, I guess. Like it's just a lot of these players that like you drafted pretty high and had not a great week 1. I'm just not really worried about them because it's just a small sample size compared to what we know
Mm-hmm.
historically. Like if it's a younger player, like with Marv, yeah, I'm like, ah, that's not good. Caleb, oh, definitely not starting Caleb next week. But Mark Cooper, I'm starting him next week. Just run it back. Hopefully he has a better day. Deshaun looks like
Mm-hmm.
shit though. Deshaun does not look good. I
Yeah.
I was interested in buying low on Deshaun this past off season, but it seems like this coming off season it's going to be even lower. So I guess I
Mm-hmm.
bought too soon. It's not good.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mark Cooper will have his games. I wouldn't worry. 9
Mm-hmm.
targets, like 2 catches, 16 yards. It's not going to hold. It's not.
As we were saying with the DK experience, this is the Amari Cooper
Yeah,
experience.
like he
This
just
is just
has
kind of
his
what
games. He
happens.
always has in his career. He's always like a lot of people just don't
Mm-hmm.
like Amari Cooper because he has these games.
Right. It's like similar to how like Ty Lockett could also be like he'll win you some weeks, but then some weeks you might end up
Yep.
losing him.
Yep.
So All righty, moving on to the Buccaneers. My local Tampa Bay Buccaneers beating the Washington Commanders 37-20. Though the Commanders did lose pretty convincingly, it was very encouraging to see how well Jaden Daniels had done. Real life it was decent, but from a fantasy perspective, it was phenomenal. He led their team in carries, 16 carries, 88 yards for 2 touchdowns. Didn't have a single passing touchdown or interception, but around 66% completion with 184 yards is nothing to sneeze at for a rookie. It was very fun to see him run the ball the way he did.
It's fun watching Jaden Daniels play.
It reminded me a lot. Like, he's not the same type of athlete in terms of speed as AR and Lamar can be, but he did move and make the decisions like they do, where he was scrambled when it made sense to. But I was very encouraged to see his decision making, like in terms of passing it, when to pass it, when not to pass it. So it's nice to see a guy have that type of patience that early on in the league.
For sure.
But in terms of okay, so I just realized I made a typo. It's not Brain Robinson, it's Brian Robinson. But in terms of Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, what did you kind of get away from this game, considering Eckler led their team in receptions?
Yeah, I mean, Brian Robinson has never, going into the year, I never thought Brian Robinson would get a ton of receiving work. Here he actually saw, still a respectable amount, only 1 catch less. But yeah, Eckler,
Mm-hmm.
I figured he would be handling the bulk of the receiving work, Brian Robinson handling the bulk of the rushing work. It worked out that way for week 1. Obviously, there's some overlap, so that way when one comes onto the field, you don't just immediately know what they're gonna do. But yeah, I thought the split was good. But the main focus is Jaden Daniels. Looked great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that both of them are back end RB2s that you fill in when you need to. Brian Robinson being a little bit better because he'll have likely more touchdown equity, getting those goal line carries. But it's nice to see that Eckler's still getting some usage, considering how poorly he did last year, in terms of expectations, that is. The last thing to talk about the Commanders is Terry McLaurin. Every single time he was lined up, he was on the left. His route tree, the courtesy of Cliff Kingsbury, was exactly how DeAndre Hopkins looked, where it was just literally out routes, in routes, out routes, in routes. Like, literally just run straight, turn, run straight, turn. Like, that's all he did the entire game and was not targeted. I think Terry McLaurin is still, like, he's not that alpha wide receiver, but he's still a good enough wide receiver too, like likely more of a flex play. But I'm not starting Terry McLaurin if I have him going forward until I see more usage, because I am very worried that Cliff Kingsbury may have just murdered Terry McLaurin out of any sort of fantasy relevance. And that's just me, like, purely speculating, because it is still week 1, but it was not great to see how little he was, used, like, compared to how we've seen him in the past.
Yeah, not great at all. I have him in the home league, so not great. I will be firing him up next week though, because it is hard out here in the streets in a 3 wide receiver, 2 running back, 2 flex format. It's hard out here, so he will be in the
Yeah, well,
lineup.
that format's a little different because it's way deeper. But like, if
he
you're
will
in
be
like
in
a
the
2 wide
lineup
receiver, 1 flex, I'm not starting.
for sure. Yeah, if you there's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex that I'm in where I have Gary Wilson, Waddle, Rice. There's somebody else. I think it might actually be Terry, and there's just no way Terry sees the lineup
No,
ever.
certainly not. How about Baker though?
Baker had a day. Yeah, that was exciting. Just slinging that fucking thing. He actually was like the only guy who had a good passing day, so that was interesting to see.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Baker Mayfield was one of the top QBs.
Chris Godwin's not dead, so that's awesome.
Love that. I mean, we'll talk about the running backs in a second, but just kind of piggyback off the wide receivers. I think Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, you start them almost every single
Yeah,
week,
absolutely.
especially. This was, again, a plus matchup. This was a matchup that the secondary, they have one of the worst secondaries in the league. But I think that Mike Evans, still Mike Evans, nothing has changed. He looks great, 2 touchdowns, fantastic fantasy day. Chris Godwin, more that intermediate route. He's just a great slot guy. If Baker can support this and continue this, I have no qualms of seeing them both, and one of them being top 12, one of them being top 24, or them both just being between 12 and 18. I think that you start them every week that you have them.
Yeah.
It's a good problem to have if you can't start them. But at the same time, I would make an effort to start both of these guys, just because if Baker's going to do this, I would be happy and all cylinders of this offense. But I know you're a Bucky guy, so I'll let you kind of speak to the running back situation before we move on to our next game.
Yeah, I mean, it was really nice to see Bucky Irvin being involved and perform the way he did. I mean, obviously he had twice the rush load or twice the rushing production as Rashad White. I mean, White's never been known to be an efficient runner, but obviously
Mhm.
what we would like from White is the receiving game, 6 for 75. That's really nice to see. And I think his receiving role is not going to go anywhere. He's going to get plenty of dump offs. But I do think Bucky Irving is going to start to carve into the running role that he has. I think he's going to start taking some. Obviously, they're up pretty handedly here, so they weren't really, they're not trying to run, the offense they would as if they were trailing and they wanted to have Rashad White in the field because he's their two down guy. Like there's
Mhm.
2 minute back. But I was really nice to see. It was really nice to see Bucky Irving go out there and be effective on the field,
Yeah,
and
I
that
agree.
that makes me excited. I think he's very much so. Where I think his rostership is like 25% in sleeper. I think if you're somebody who wants to pick a running back up off the waivers, he's somebody that's worth picking up because his
Mhm.
hopefully he just continues to go up. I mean, obviously that probably won't happen because life's not fair, but yeah, hopefully he just keeps going up.
Yeah, if it's certainly in a 12-team league or 14-team league and those like zero RB builds, he's definitely a great handcuff and potentially, desperate RB2 to have. My 70+% dynasty ownership of him is paying dividends, hopefully. So I'm very happy to see Bucky Irving do his thing. So moving on to the second to last game, we have Boyd's Detroit Lions beating the LA Rams
This was a
26 to
sweat.
20. Now, what I'll do here is I will cover all of the Rams and you can cover all of Detroit.
Sick. That sounds
So,
fair.
yeah, in terms of Matt Stafford, one of the few quarterbacks to get over 300 passing yards, only one touchdown, one interception, but 49 pass attempts, 34 completions. He's just going to feed the ball to whoever's his pass catching core. Kyron Williams had a very inefficient day, but did save it with a touchdown, had 3 receptions for 4 yards. So if you have him, you wouldn't be overly, upset, but at the same time, you're not going to be encouraged by the efficiency. But the one thing is that Corum does not appear to be a factor at this stage of the season. So any qualms about Kyron potentially, losing his job to Corum right now has kind of been put to bed, at least in the short term. We'll kind of revisit it if Corum gets any usage later down the line, because Ronnie Rivers is getting, carries before Blake Corum is, so that's a little bit concerning. But in terms of the wide receivers, Puka went down, very upsetting. He was leading, the receiving at that point in time before he went down. But Cooper Kupp is probably going to be, the best fantasy wide receiver or top
Oh
three
yeah,
until Puka comes back because 21 targets is actually ludicrous for a
that's
wide
insane,
receiver to
bro.
get in the game. It's actually ridiculous. 14 receptions for 10 or 110 yards. So it wasn't, the very long passes, but in a PPR, especially getting a touchdown, like that's just, you're just, going to get crazy volume. He has an extremely high floor and ceiling until like week 8, which is, the projected time Puka's supposed to come back at full health. Um, However, the next question is who's the next guy in line? Because we saw Tyler Johnson and Demarcus Robinson get 7 targets each, and Colby Parkinson to get 5 targets. I would argue that Demarcus in order, it'd be Demarcus Robinson, Colby Parkinson, Tyler Johnson in order of priority. But I think that if you add any of them as a spec ad in like a deeper league, you couldn't really go wrong because one of them is going to end up being, not the next Puka, obviously, but there's gonna need like if Stafford's going to be passing the ball 49 times a game, 25 of them are probably going to go to Cooper Kupp, and then the other 25 are going to go somewhere else. So it's nice that it would be nice in a heavy passing volume offense to get the next best guy. And if you're desperate at tight end, Coley Parkinson is definitely a guy that you could prioritize behind Isaiah Likely because and above Taysom Hill, I would say. So I've talked about the Rams long enough. I will let Boyd talk about his Detroit Lions and what we got out of this game because there's some very interesting points.
This was a sweat. This was not how I wanted to spend my Monday night. I did not want to spend it. I'm on the East Coast as well, so 8:20 kickoff. Man, it was a late night, and I time it was nerve-wracking. Jared Goff looked like Jared Goff. That David Montgomery wouldn't have a role, even though we just saw him last year have a very clear and established role. So this
Mhm.
didn't surprise me. He's going to get a lot of carries. It's going to annoy people who have Jahmyr Gibbs, but it's good for the Lions in actual football. And I mean, he had 91 yards. He had the overtime touchdown. He was destroying them in overtime. It was smash mouth football. I mean, it was crazy. And then Jahmyr Gibbs, he gets 11 rushes compared to his 17. The receiving work wasn't really there that you're like really hoping for. I mean, he had 4 for 34, but you're really hoping for more involvement there, and he didn't get the touchdown. So it's going to be one of those things where they might both go off. One of them might go off. One of them might have a decent day. One of them might just not have a good day at all. It's going to be a headache. But I think that they're absolutely players that should be in your starting lineup without a doubt. Their upside is
Mhm.
huge. Even David Montgomery's, and you can't really go wrong betting on a piece of this offense, as proven by the next guy I'm going to talk about, Jameson Williams, who I like didn't want anything to do with. Like they would scheme up something or he would get like one deep play. But no, like 9 targets. He was playing out there and he was playing like as the guy that I really don't think you can go wrong though with any of the Detroit Lions for fantasy. Even Jared Goff, even though
Mhm.
it's Jared Goff.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It was very interesting to see JMO do that well. So
Yeah, I mean, he had a fantastic day, and
mhm.
I'm biased 'cause I'm a Lions fan, but you guys know, like, if you've been listening, I've been saying to get rid of him, trade him, not the Lions trade him, but in Dynasty, I don't want him on my roster, and so it was just surprising and kind of, like I said, I root for chaos, so it was cool seeing somebody that people wrote off pop off. It was
Mhm.
nice.
For sure, especially when it's the team you support.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was someone who wrote him off though, so like it's just, I don't know, it was just cool.
Right. So moving on to the last game, Monday night, San Francisco 49ers comfortably take down the New York Jets 32-19. Aaron Rodgers looked okay at the start and then just kind of settled into just meh.
He
Um,
made it through the game though, in one piece.
yeah, he did make it through the game in one piece, but he didn't end up finishing the game as displayed by Tyrod Taylor scoring a touchdown on the final drive to kind of make the scoreline look a little bit more admirable.
Mhm.
But yeah, Aaron Rodgers, I would say I'm not sounding any alarm bells just yet with him if you have him in like a dynasty as a second QB or if you're, streaming him in a deeper league. But I think there's better options for now. Keep him on your radar, but not a great first game. It was a great first game for Brees Hall, though. I do have to say.
Gotta love Brees.
Not yeah, not incredibly efficient, but the usage was there in both the rushing and receiving department. He had 5 receptions for nearly 40 yards, 54 rushing touchdowns on 16 attempts with a touchdown. Great to see, especially if you roster him like I do in some leagues. Um, Boyd, how about the receivers? It just looks like it's
I
just Garrett Wilson.
I want to know what blackmail Alan Lazard has on Aaron Rodgers because this shit is fucking insane. It's 2024, the first game. This guy has 2 touchdowns and nearly 90 yards. Alan Lazard.
I will say that most of that came in the last drive with Tyrod Taylor.
But still, like
So
it's just why is my boy Alan Lazard getting work at all? It's just Aaron Rodgers is like low key, like it's not nepotism because he's not their father, but he's like got nepotism for certain Packers. Like Randall
Mhm.
Cobb played there last year, man. Like it's crazy, and
Yeah.
like you said, Tyrod Taylor did have Tyrod contributed, but still, it just blows my mind that Alan Lazard is like getting looked at, even like
Yeah.
looked at in general. But yeah, Garrett Wilson. This kind of looks like a Zach Wilson stat line. Is kind of how I feel. Like I didn't get the touchdown, which is a bummer. He will get touchdowns, but I was hoping for better than 6 for 60. But that will
Mhm.
come. That will come. Aaron Rodgers' first game in a year off the Achilles tear. It's the offense is gonna get better. Hackett sucks though, and I don't like the staff, but the players will have their upside.
Mhm. No, I agree. I think it's just like Mike Williams is just toast. Not even
Yeah,
he
he didn't
was
even.
he didn't get a single target, not on the
Yeah,
stat sheet. I think he's cooked. For now, who knows? Maybe he'll come on, but Garrett Wilson is clearly, the guy you drafted. He's getting the usage. Mediocre fantasy day, but he had 11 targets. We'll see how it is. He was feeding him in the first quarter and then didn't see another target or another reception until the fourth quarter. So it was very weird how it played out, but
Silly.
could also attribute it to the San Francisco 49ers having a very good defense. Jordan Mason, though, man, one hell of a plug-in, I do have to say, going
Yeah, that was wild.
UDFA not starting a single game in his career in the first game, just gets 152 all scrimmage yards, all-purpose yards, 28 carries, 147 rushing yards, a touchdown, one reception for 5 yards. If McCaffrey's out, which it's looking like he very much is, he is the number one ad, simply just because, one, we don't know how long this McCaffrey injury is going to linger for, but this guy is clearly primary and premium handcuff to have.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that he's now earned, some usage even when McCaffrey is back. So he is if you're not getting likely, I would definitely say Jordan Mason's the next highest in priority. But now that McCaffrey is out, Boyd, what do you think about Debo's potential upside going forward?
Yeah. I mean, Debo's Debo, man. Especially with Christian McCaffrey not being there to command as much volume, Debo's going to get involved more in the rushing game. We saw here 8 carries. I don't expect him to have 23 yards off 8 carries ever again. Debo is going to be great for fantasy. Ayuk really should have played football sooner, and I'm just hoping that he gets back into the swing of things, gets back into the motion, gets back into the rhythm, and is able to look like Ayuk from last year. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I think I'm not worried at all about Ayuk, and I'm very excited about Debo. So just overall, even Kittle, I know Kittle didn't have a great day. Overall, I'm still very positive about the Niners offense. And I think I saw that Christian McCaffrey has Achilles, some Achilles injury.
Tendonitis.
Yeah,
Achilles
tendonitis.
tendonitis. So it's they said that if it was a playoff game, he likely would have played, but it's just inflammation in his Achilles. So
See, I don't like that.
It's a comfort thing. It's not necessarily. It's going to be one of those discomfort type of injuries where he's not necessarily hurt to affect his performance, but he's going to
Given that
be in
plus a
pain.
calf strain, I.
Well, the calf strain was because was what they deemed it, but that was just because
Oh,
the
okay.
Achilles connects to
Still,
the calf, and they just weren't
I was feeding
very
CMC at
specific.
101 this year already, and this stuff just makes me I'm good.
Yeah, I drafted him. And I'm very upset. But I did pick up Jordan Mason before the game started, so that was nice. But
I had a 101 and I took Lamb, and I think I only did that
yeah,
because it's either a 2 wide receiver, 2 flex, or a 3 wide receiver, 1 flex league.
mm-hmm.
So I
I
saved
did a hero
myself there.
RB. I did a hero RB with CMC, and my running backs were Christian McCaffrey, Javonte Williams, and Raheem Mostert.
Damn.
So it's a little tough, but we'll figure it out. So we'll move on. That concludes our lengthy week 1 recap. But these are our priority waiver scoops. We have. I apologize for being in the dark here, but we'll roll with it. As the highest priority, we have Jordan Mason and Isaiah Likely. These are the 2 guys that I would recommend you spend a decent amount of budget for, and I would definitely make claims regardless of where your priority is, just in case people don't end up claiming for them. These 2 guys are likely going to be potential difference makers. Jordan Mason more so in the short term, but potentially long term, and Isaiah Likely for the rest of the season. If you're in need of a quarterback, definitely think Baker Mayfield is that guy. I think that he could be, if you didn't prioritize a top quarterback, he could end up being, top 10 option for you. And then J.K. Dobbins is likely the last high priority just because of his extremely high efficiency. And, he could end up leading the offense he could end up taking this running back room from Gus Edwards. And Boyd, I'll kind of let you go over the medium priorities, which is the bulk of where our waiver scoops lie.
Yeah, medium. It's just it's a big glob, big pick your poison. A lot of these guys, I wouldn't be surprised. Not a lot, but a good handful of them, I wouldn't be surprised if they're not available on your waiver. But we tried to be broad. We tried to Sleeper, ESPN, Yahoo, NFL. There's a lot of different apps you can play on, so we're trying to cover a lot of names here. My favorite of the mediums would be Jalen Wright. I don't expect him to be available. Xavier Legette. I don't expect him to be available. And then of the ones that I expect to be available would be Alexander Madison, Justice Hill. I think those guys, good priority pickups. Maybe you don't want to blow like top waiver priority on it. I get that, but if they didn't go through and then you pick them up the day after, nothing wrong with that. Besides that, though, I think if you're looking like Ryan said, if you're looking for a tight end, Colby Parkinson's the next one you want to go with. I do think Justin Fields is set up to smash this coming week against, I believe, the Broncos. That should be a great game for him. And then besides that,
Mhm.
we have a couple other people that are kind of the similar kind of vibe with the Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks, I guess Greg Dortch to a lesser extent. But yeah, just some wide receiver help if you need it. Wandale Robinson, Demarcus Robinson, just some wide receiver help if you need it. I don't really like to pick up wide receivers off waivers because usually they really aren't able to make that substantial of a difference. But if you do need a wide
Mhm.
receiver, these are the ones that we would recommend looking at. Besides that, though, we do the lower priority. Bucky Irving, guys. Yeah, put him in medium. That's what I got.
Yeah, Bucky Irving, I had just put in low priority just because a lot of this was game script dependent.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I get it.
But you could definitely make the case for medium priority. It all depends on team build, like because I believe there are many better running back options this week in terms of waiver scoops that you can make other than Bucky Irving. But if a lot of these options are gone, he'd be the next guy in line, and I wouldn't be opposed to taking him in any spot. Tyler Johnson is just kind of there, like I'd mentioned, just in case he ends up being a better second option for Matt Stafford. Then we got Tanks Bigsby in case what we saw was somewhat of a legitimate case of him getting a little bit more usage. Devon Vell, I just put there because he was the most targeted receiver by Bo Nix, and it was a lot of the short routes. And he is even though he is 26, he is technically a rookie, so we don't really know what we're going to get with him. And then Jordan Whittington is Boyd's little sneak peek, or excuse me, sleeper. But
You don't gotta pick him
he
up, but
is,
keep an eye on him because Tyler Johnson sucks.
yeah. Tyler Johnson is definitely doesn't have a track record. Has done decent when he's on the field, but Whittington is also the guy that didn't see the field for the Rams, but could be a wide receiver to take a look at in extremely deep leagues. But
Deep,
yeah, that wraps up. Oh, what were you gonna say?
deep leagues, yeah.
Oh yeah, deep leagues. So that wraps up today's show. It was a very lengthy one. Unfortunately, we didn't have Bick here to join us, but we hope he will be with us next week. Let us know in the comments who you're going to be picking up out of these guys. Let us know what your thoughts are on any of the comments that we made. If you have any different takes that you got from these games. Please let us know any improvements that you think we should have. Make sure you guys follow us on all of our socials. Make sure you subscribe, leave a like. Boyd, what's the comment of the day? What should our viewers comment?
Let me know what your favorite fruit is.
Favorite fruit?
Yep. What's your favorite fruit?
My favorite fruit's probably raspberry. Those are probably my favorite to just
Yeah,
eat by themselves.
yeah. Those are good. Those are good.
Mm.
Ah, those are good. I think I like grapes.
Yeah, grapes. You can't go wrong with grapes.
Yeah, grapes
So
are
many things that you could do with them.
yeah, grapes are just good. Yeah, let us know your
But
favorite
yeah,
fruit.
let us know your favorite fruit. Make sure you guys tune in for later this week when we go over our overview for week 2. That'll be coming out sometime on either Thursday or Friday. So yeah, that wraps up today's show. We hope you all enjoyed, and we'll catch you on the next one. See
Goodbye.
ya.